Hello, and welcome to the 9th session of the combination of science, metaphysics, and how it could explain the workings of a computer simulation. In past sessions, I have introduced scripts based on the numbers 1 and 2. This session is dedicated to the number 3, Mercury, and the Gemini script. June picks up where May leaves off, as the earth shows her appreciation of the sun by bringing forth beauty. The days are getting longer, and the people are enjoying leisurely living. Solar power is maximized in the season of Gemini. This is the time of the great hurrah for the day forces as they increased to their maximum. The event horizon. Something happens which manifests as a synthesis of the masculine and the feminine. This synthesis is the creation of the magic genie, the intellect. It is the formation of the intellect that marks human domination over other species. Thus, to the advocates of the solar force, the birth of the intellect is their greatest achievement. When the planetary energy of Mercury is switched on, the formation of the thinking entity submits to separation of the ego from the collective. In the world of the 5-year-old, a child develops his new toy, the magic genie. As communication skills improve, the sense of personal freedom increases. He is becoming free from its nurture. Gemini is a mutable sign, a synthesis of the previous 2 polarized signs. The primitive masculine cardinal energy of Aries with the feminine fixed energy of Taurus. The successful synthesis produces a neutral mind. That is, it can remain detached enough to simulate information free from bias. Gemini is an air sign and deals with thought. Thought forms are matter in its lightest form, so fine that it can't be measured. Power radiates from these thought forms because it is through them that the simulation is constructed. It is through the mind that motion is created. Gemini is a masculine sign, but not the most masculine. In fact, there should be no masculine nor feminine bias, but balanced neutrality. The mind is a whore. It serves any master. It can conjure any rationalization to satisfy a desire, no matter how hidden it may be. The mind is unhealthy when it is out of balance. It is not truly mutable, not a real synthesis. Any bias the thought form has leads to mental disease, the unbalanced mind. Mercury is obsessed with the sun, always showing the same face to it. In this respect, it is like the moon. Thus, we only see the side facing the sun when Mercury is in the direct mode, on the far side of the sun. We see the dark side when Mercury is in the retrograde mode. So Mercury has a dark and light mode, 2 faces. Mercury is the communicator of ideas. In mythology, he was the messenger of the gods. He could fly in the air and brought thought forms across long distances. The difficulty with Mercury is that he is obsessed with the sun, so much so that it is difficult to separate the two. He makes amalgams with most elements, including gold, the sun. He layers all the planetary energies with intellectualism. In short, he strives to be center stage. The mind is the connection between the self and the outer reality. It is connected to all the senses. Since we are more dependent upon them, we are more dependent on the intellect to input all the data. The mind works in duality. It is always you and an object outside yourself. The mind is the bridge between the two. It is the nature of the intellect to label all objects outside of self. Labeling an object outside of self with thoughts feeds the ego but then we lose the existential experience. Thus, the intellect divides us. It isolates us from objects outside ourselves. A strong Mercury equates to a strong intellect, a clear ability to distinguish self from outside objects, resulting in isolation. Taken to the extreme, can lead to schizophrenia. Again, Mercury is the hallmark of the yang or solar forces, which strives to separate themselves so as to shine. The result is a division of the mind. As all the energies of the planets ride on the wings of Mercury. As mentioned, Mercury coats all the metals, creating amalgams, meaning Mercury layers with the energy with a dualistic twist, either black or white. This is symbolized by the fact that Mercury doesn't rotate, so the energy is perceived as one extreme. Over time, the other extreme will start its play. I'll do this, or maybe I'll do that, back and forth, on and on. It is incapable of discerning gray. The intellect will interpret it as either black or white. The other is repressed or invisible. Over time, the repressed interpretation starts to be observed. The further we head to the extreme, the opposite end emerges with such statements as, "Stop, you are going the wrong way. Turn around and go the opposite way." So for a while we are in the horns of duality, bringing struggle. We go back and forth. Sooner or later, we do turn around and go the other way. This is the nature of the intellect, not to be able to see gray and therefore incapable of making a sound decision. Any decision made by the intellect will be an accident in time, wherever the mind is in its cycle between the two extremes. As I mentioned, all it does is go back and forth and makes grooves in the psyche. Mercury is a neutral planet, and its position in the chart would not be very sensitive to its sign. It is comfortable in all the signs. The important thing to look for is the angular relationships, aspects to the other planets. These relationships are critical to understanding the nature of Mercury and the intellect. Mercury conjunctions with the Sun promises a powerful intellect, but with the problem with all conjunctions have is the difficulty in separating the energies. The powerful intellect demands a powerful Sun or will to control it. A mind without control is a dangerous mind. It would be difficult to tune out the mind, making meditation impossible. Again, like everything, duality is present with all the aspects. The plus side favors the masculine ego with a strong developed intellect. The negative side is the difficulties in separating the energies. Mercury's aspects with other planets indicate the issue of how it carries the energy. Stressful aspects, squares and oppositions, would indicate difficulties carrying the energy. Software problems. There is a conflict between the energy and how it fits the solar scheme of shining. Thus, the planetary energy will work in a negative way in attempts to bring down the solar paradigm, as is typical in the yin cycle. Further examination of the chart is called for in determining why a planet has conflict with Mercury. Perhaps it has something to do with the obsession with solar energy. This means that the subject planet looks bad in relationship to rational judgments by the mind. The mind will rationalize that the energy is bad. With flowing aspects trine, the energy will be painted white. Even though Mercury is considered neutral, it will always support the ego and be on the masculine or yang side. Therefore, balances are needed to bring in the yin side. Mercury goes retrograde and shows us its negative side for about 18 days and does this 2 or 3 times a year. This side never sees the sun and therefore will not give impressions that favor the solar, masculine, or developing ego. Mercury retrograde is in essence going backwards and gives us a chance to re-examine any suppressed thoughts that have been occurring during these past 3 months when Mercury was direct. It gives us the opportunity to bring up stuff that we have not expressed in conscious ways, allowing the shadow forces to emerge. As mentioned, This is not the time for ego support. Communications may not be smooth during this period. Sleeping may also be a problem because the mind is chattering away all night. Perhaps all these suppressed thoughts are trying to surface. Mercury, representing the intellect, works through association. It has the ability to bring information together. When Mercury is working, it can associate its objective reality with information in its hard drive. So if someone mentions something in a particular topic, you can access your memory banks and come up with information regarding the topic. Thus, Mercury works in the past because all the associations are past information. What the mind strives to do is to project all the past knowledge into the future so as to predict. The technical world looks at statistics and other facts and predicts that the future based on the past will be. The mind will basically let to conclude that the past is the only variable in predicting the future. Thus Mercury leads us to materialization, the goal of the masculine and the yang world. The yin force will work in some way to disrupt these patterns. The yang mind is incapable of conceiving quantum jumps and other changes not based on causality. Rational thinking cannot conceive of the appearance of new energy out of dense matter. Past associations cannot understand something like the Jesus myth, where he came from humble beginnings and yet be able to bring out such new concepts. In this respect, the mind is limited and Mercury is limited. The mind sees everything as a continuance. It misses all the spaces in between. The mind gives us the illusion of reality similar to seeing a movie. If we can slow down the film speed, ultimately we see that it is not continuous but just stop-action photography. It is the nature of the yang force to see it as a continuum. The opposite is the goal of the feminine. A balanced mind uses each when necessary. The important planetary pairs involving Mercury is in its connection with Jupiter. Jupiter brings in the food and Mercury assimilates it. Again, balance between these two energies is essential for a balanced mind. The Gemini is an individual who identifies with his intellect. To be able to absorb information from the senses, process them, and communicate its findings. This is an individual in tune with the technology in this world, especially the computer. The Gemini is a communicator of ideas. It is through communication that he wins, having control or domination of the object. He controls the airwaves. His intellectual wisdom brings order to the universe using his senses. This is the current scientific paradigm. The myth of Prometheus involves a mortal who stole solar energy from the gods, shared it with mortals, and was looked upon as a god, reflecting the Gemini script. The Gemini has a trine aspect with Libra, the sign of the 5th house cusp. Thus, the yang winning script includes the flowing energies of air signs, Gemini to Libra. Libra is the sign of sharing. Gemini wins through sharing. By the wings of Mercury, he brings the sun and shares it with his peers and is looked upon as a god. When he communicates, he uses his Libra charm, his gift, to hold you spellbound in his orations. In this script, we find the sign of Leo on the 3rd house cusp. What is learned through the manifestation of the yang portion of the script is Leo and the solar forces. The Gemini becomes a god and attracts satellites that rotate around him, the central sun, and reflect his sun-like qualities back on him. Gemini on the rising has Sagittarius on the cusp of the 7th house. The Gemini ideals identifying with this sign will project out Sagittarius. Sagittarius deals with the ability to see both sides, which is the essence of wisdom. This wisdom makes us choices. What Prometheus and Geminis do is to steal universal wisdom, forming a thought registered in the lower mind. The result is winning in the simulation. Recall, the lower mind deals with duality. By By stealing the universal wisdom, he chooses one side and stuffs the other into the subconscious or projects it. Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, punishes Prometheus by chaining him to a rock and has vultures eat his liver. The liver deals with purity, filtering out what isn't. Astrologically, Virgo is the sign that rules the liver. It has the ability to discern what is pure from what isn't. Pisces is on the cusp of the 10th house. Responsibility is needed in dealing with this energy. It deals with illusions and disillusions. Without protection from Saturn, the Gemini would steal all the light to illuminate the universe. One of the laws of the universe is when thoughts regarding the nature of things becomes obvious, rest assured you are in an illusion. Soon the veils of illusions will descend. Saturn will bring down these illusions so as to bring the yin portion of the script and the need for Virgo. Virgo deals with the need to analyze, discriminate, and detoxify impressions. When the Gemini native feels the need for Virgo, he loses the ability to discern whether he speaks truth or untruth. His stories become fish stories, and after a while he forgets what is true. The impression loses any value and will have to be repeated. Thus the vulture has eaten the liver of Prometheus, bringing on the yin portion of the script. Virgo is trying to Capricorn in the 8th house and deals with responsibility of the mind. Without detoxifying the mind, it fills with poison that will be expressed within his words. The Gemini loses what he values most, the ability to feel and be sensitive to others, as the loss of Cancer would produce. This grip is particularly dangerous because it lays spiritual karma. That is why Prometheus was punished so severely. Stealing the sun and bringing it to the earth to give to man meant stealing the future. Man wasn't ready for the sun's information, otherwise he would have received it. We can look at the sun as wisdom. For the sake of pride, he gave wisdom to people before they were ready for it. They were innocent and asleep. Because of the communication, the karma of the people was upset. This is the power of the word. For the offense, he was severely punished. It's like telling an infant there is no Santa Claus before he's ready. Moreover, the mind serves any master, meaning it has the ability to coat any repressed emotion with cool analytical expression. You should never trust an intellectual when they are emotional over a topic. The sign of Scorpio in the 6th house cusp, the synthesis of the yin portion of the script. Scorpio in the death of innocence is the means by which the Gemini is transmuted into Sagittarius in the 7th house cusp. Scorpio deals with bringing up the beast from within. The beast which lies deep within the Gemini is associated with his need to speak as a god. When the beast appears, it demonstrates to his audience that he is not a god, that his words are tainted with half-truths and lack of compassion. Once again, the midheaven supplies the energy, which brings on the counterbalance. It brings on a shift from Cancer and feelings to Scorpio and burning away the unconscious, like a snake shedding its skin. The script is symbolized by the square between Gemini and Virgo, dealing with the issue of truth. Planets in these signs will have issues here. The trines between Gemini to Libra and Virgo to Capricorn will have some issues. Of course, the main character in this drama is Mercury, since he rules both Mercury and its operator, Virgo. As mentioned, Mercury isn't sensitive to the sign, but with relation with other planets. He only forms conjunctions with the sign. Such an aspect would guarantee a dominant mind that may be challenging to turn off. The inferior conjunction in Mercury would suggest that the native learn to discriminate first before communicating. It takes 3 entities before something is visible within the simulation. Lithium, the 3rd element, is visible to the senses as a substance called a metal. The Earth's process of squeezing its cations and pushing out the electron produces a metal. Metals are rivers within the Earth. Therefore, they have both water rules, opposite tracks, and earth rules, like citron. Lithium is used for treating schizophrenia, reducing the swings to a more manageable level, the synthesis. The I Ching has important lessons in understanding change. Tossing coins is a method of divination, but it also teaches the mechanism for change. The sexual act serves as a perfect example of the stages. The two participants engaged reflect a static union, yang and yin, male and female, or one and two. This is the simulation before the change. The moment of change is the squirt, an irreversible process. There is a switch in roles. The male delivers the squirt or fire force and becomes yin or female. This is termed old yang, a moving line where yang becomes yin. This occurs when two coins, both heads, are tossed. When two tails are tossed, this is old yin, a moving line where yin becomes yang. This is the female that receives the fire and becomes yang in developing a baby. This is the pregnant Venus. Lithium-3 before the squirt is a metal, a solid part of the earth. In the simulation, after the squirt, lithium becomes a cation captured in water and becomes the property of water to do her bidding. Now 3 tosses of the coins produces 8 possible combinations. This is the family of 8 and the 8 columns of the chemical elements. Number 1 is the father, 3 heads. 2 is the mother, 3 tails. The children are 6 possible combinations of heads and tails. These 3-line symbols are known as trigrams. These 8 trigrams are associated with one of the 8 natural forces of nature, heaven and earth, and so forth. And they also form the family members, father, mother, the 3 sons, and the 3 daughters. The 3 denotes a melee, 2 against 1, and creates spin. Spin creates a vortex. Vortices provide movements between heaven and earth. The greater the motion of the vortex, the purer the wormhole becomes. These pure vortices allow passage for the programmer and for electrons. Lithium has three protons and 4 neutrons placed in symmetrical ways to diffuse the charges. An isotope is lithium-6, 3 protons, electrons, and neutrons. 333. It is a perfect combination for controlled spin, creating a vortex power enough to initiate alchemical events. So lithium-3 plays a big part in alchemy. He is the synthesis of the 1 and the 2, heaven and earth. He is the gateway or catalyst to the breach of the world of chemistry into alchemy, or nuclear chemistry. Now, the sex of an archetype is sometimes confusing in metaphysical analysis. The numerology number may have a different sex than the astrological equivalent sign or the tarot equivalent. In the case of 3, there is an action from masculine to feminine. Each discipline picks up the action as either male or female. In this session, I discussed the Gemini 3 and the script involving the planetary energy of Mercury. Mercury is involved with both sides of the lower mind. They deal with input, processing, and output. Gemini deals with input and output. Gemini is involved with the Prometheus myths where he steals consciousness from Jupiter, shares it with mortals, and looked upon as a god. The yang or positive side of the script is the ego glorification result with sharing such knowledge. His punishment is removal of liver, which deals with what is purity, the essence of the sign of Virgo. In short, the Gemini speaks with clarity of consciousness until he reaches the event horizon, where he loses the ability to discern what is truth from fantasy. In the next session, I will discuss the 4, the Cancer script, and the planetary energy of the moon. The properties of water will also be discussed. Until then, I wish you good day.